In 38 years at NASA, my next guest has done lots of things. As an astronaut, he flew 3 space missions, commanding 2 of them. He oversaw retirement of the Space Shuttle, and he rose to Associate Administrator, the number 3 ranking person at NASA. Now Bob Cabana is turning in his badge in retirement. He joins me now for a retrospective. Mr. Cabana, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Is it safe to say that it's unusual for someone who was an operational type of person, actual astronaut, to rise into the managerial ranks this high at NASA?
No, we actually had Admiral Dick Truly rise to be NASA Administrator. And so Charlie Bolden, NASA Administrator, also an astronaut. So we've had a number of astronauts in senior leadership positions at NASA.
Could that be one reason that NASA has consistently high scores in the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, is because the mission and the idea of what you're actually doing stays high in the ranks of leadership as opposed to management from some sort of an academic standpoint or a business standpoint?
I think there's some truth to that. My belief is we're number 1 on the Employee Viewpoint Survey 11 years in a row because of the mission that we have. We have a meaningful mission that's really important, not just to our nation, but for humanity. But more importantly, I believe it's how we treat our people. We have what we call a NASA family, and we really look after our team and one another, in creating that environment along with the mission, being focused on doing something that's really important where everybody has a role to play. It makes it a little easier to be the best.
Sure. And I like to think of people in terms of cohorts sometimes, because in the coverage we've been doing and what I've been covering for 30 years, in the federal government, you have 1102s, say contracting officers. That's a cohort, or people that are CIOs. One of the rarer or more rarefied cohorts is people that have flown in space. And I don't know how many there are of you, probably just a couple of hundred, really, when you add it all up. Is that a cohort from your standpoint? And what kind of cohortness do you have on an ongoing basis for those that did actually fly in space?
Actually, it's over 500 now. As a matter of fact, when I flew my first flight back in 1990, turns out I was the 211th human to fly in space. But we do get together through various professional societies, as well as we have an annual astronaut reunion that usually takes place down here in Houston in the December timeframe every other year. The Association of Space Explorers, many of us are members of that. They have an annual Congress where we get together, and that's international, not just U.S. astronaut reunion as it is here in Houston. So, yeah, absolutely. We get together, and, I think all the astronauts, they're concerned about the future. They want to see us take care of our planet. They want us to see us continue to explore and expand beyond our home planet.
And I've always wondered, someone having flown in space, do you feel that it changed you in some way? I've always been a little disappointed with how reticent, like Neil Armstrong was about his experience. And being the first man on the moon is, no mean thing. And yet he didn't talk about it much and was reticent about what psychological or perspective changes it might have produced. So my question is, does it change a person to have flown in space, even if not to the moon?
Well, I think it definitely offers you a different perspective on our planet. And Neil was one of the finest gentlemen I've ever known. More than an astronaut, he was a test pilot, and he loved being a professor and teaching and sharing his knowledge. But I think from an astronaut's perspective, one of the things that stands out most when you look down on the Earth from low Earth orbit is the fragility of our home planet. When you see the atmosphere, this thin little hazy line that is protecting us from that harsh void of space, it looks kind of fragile. The other thing that you notice is you don't see the boundaries between countries. You just see this as spaceship Earth, this one planet that we all live on that we have to take care of. I think that's really important. You see, back when the rainforest was being burned off, you could see the plumes from all the fires. It gives you a unique perspective. That overview effect that people talk about is real. I just believe that, we need to learn to work together to take care of our home planet and to ensure that we have a sustainable future.
We're speaking with Bob Cabana. He's Associate Administrator of NASA, retiring at the end of December. And what was your decision process for staying with the agency after retiring from flight? Because people do go on to a lot of other things. You, as you mentioned, a few others have stayed with NASA. What was your motivation?
Absolutely. Well, so first off, the first 15 years of my 38 years at NASA was as an active duty Marine. Being selected to be an astronaut, about half the astronaut corps is active duty military, and then NASA reimburses DoD for our pay and allowances. And I was a colonel in '06 in the Marine Corps, approaching my 30-year mandatory retirement, being a general officer. And I'd had offers to do a lot of different things. But at that time, I was working as the manager for international operations for the space station program. And I wanted to see that through. I wanted to see us continue to build the International Space Station, see it through to completion, to be part of all the amazing things that NASA was doing. And I felt that I could do that best by staying with NASA. So I retired from the Marine Corps and moved into the senior executive service in a leadership position. And then, continually got asked to take on positions of greater responsibility.
And at the top, we mentioned you were overseeing the retirement of the Space Shuttle program, and a lot of us can remember it from its inception to its retirement. And what's involved in ending a program? Because there's a lot of programmatic money and administrative process connected with a program like that, but there's also a lot of physical infrastructure.
Absolutely. So at the time the shuttle program ended, I was the director of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and where the space shuttles, of course, were processed and launched and recovered and got ready for flight again. So I wasn't overseeing the entire retirement of the shuttle program. That was done via the shuttle program manager. But transitioning the Kennedy Space Center to the future, that was huge. So ensuring that we processed, I was there for the remaining 12 shuttle missions when I got there in October of 2008. The last shuttle flew in July of 2011. And I had an awesome team, and we worked extremely hard to make sure that the last mission was flown as safely as could possibly be done. And it was probably one of the cleanest flights that we had. So keeping the team motivated to continue to do well, knowing that they weren't going to have a job when the program ended. We went from a workforce of 15,000 down to 7,500 in 2 years. When the Space Shuttle Atlantis landed in July 2011, that was on a Thursday. On Friday, the very next day, 2,000 contractors got pink slips and walked out the door. But yet they performed flawlessly right up to the end. That's the kind of dedication of the workforce at KSC.
We're speaking with Bob Cabana. He's a 38-year veteran of NASA and a Marine Corps veteran. He flew in space 3 times and is about to retire as NASA's Associate Administrator. Before the break, we were talking about retirement of the Space Shuttle and the sunsetting of that program. It must have caused a lot of regret to see all that engineering talent and experience walk out the door. Was there any way of preserving that knowledge and that learning?
So that was a real challenge. And obviously, most of the folks that walked out the door were the technicians that actually did the hands-on labor processing the orbiters, but there was engineering workforce that went also. We worked with Brevard Workforce. About a third of the folks were eligible to retire, and a third of the folks found jobs elsewhere, many moving outside of Florida in order to find work. So it was a huge challenge, motivating the team and then working to help take care of them afterwards. It was compounded by the fact that in 2010, the Constellation program that was to replace the space shuttle had been canceled. So there was no real significant work for KSC of the magnitude of the shuttle program after that. But with the advent of the Space Launch System, SLS, and Orion, with a future in exploration, still maintaining the space station, which was all the cargo and stuff got processed at KSC. we started building back, how could we enable the resources that